You think empires are built with armies, but the Indian Ocean built empires with wind. And the craziest part is that nobody ever owned the whole ocean. No single flag, no single capital. Yet for centuries, it ran like the most reliable trade machine on Earth, because the monsoon made time predictable, and predictable time makes trust profitable. If you like documentaries that explain the hidden rules behind power, subscribe now, because this story is basically the blueprint for how the modern world still works. Picture the ocean as an operating system. The monsoon is the clock. Every year it flips. One season the winds push you east. Another season they push you west. That simple rhythm turned water into a schedule. And once you have a schedule, you can build contracts. You can plan inventories. You can promise delivery. You can borrow money against a voyage that hasn't happened yet. That's monsoon money. Not coins. Not kings. A calendar made of wind. In the Mediterranean, trade could be messy. Storms, short hops, surprise weather. But in the Indian Ocean, sailors learned something almost unfair. The winds weren't random. They were seasonal. You could leave one coast when the wind turned, ride it like a moving road, and arrive when the season said you should. Ancient texts even talk about timing voyages to the months of the monsoon. Later, Arab and Persian pilots wrote detailed sailing instructions, routes, currents, ports, stretching from East Africa to China. So the first secret of this system is not who had the biggest ships. It's who could read the sky. Now here's where it gets interesting. A predictable wind doesn't just move ships, it concentrates people. Because if thousands of merchants know they'll be waiting months for the wind to flip, then ports stop being stops. They become seasons of life. Warehouse districts, counting houses, repair yards, markets where everything gets priced, stored, and resold while the ocean is effectively closed. The Indian Ocean didn't create one empire. It created nodes. Kilwa and the Swahili Coast, pulling gold and ivory from inland routes and pushing them onto ships. Aden, sitting like a gate at the mouth of the Red Sea, where goods could be redirected toward Egypt and the Mediterranean. Hormuz, controlling the throat of the Persian Gulf. Calicut on India's Malabar coast, famous as a giant mixing bowl of languages, spices, and brokers, so busy that it felt like the middle of the map. And then Malacca, the ultimate choke point city, where ships funneled between the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. These places were not just ports, they were switching hubs. Goods rarely traveled, end to end, in one heroic voyage. Most of the time they hopped. A merchant might carry cargo to one hub, sell it, and another merchant carried it onward. That's not a weakness. That's the design. A network works better when risk is distributed and information is local. Which brings us to the second secret. This ocean ran on trust faster than it ran on timber. Imagine being a merchant in the 1100s. You're about to hand over expensive cargo to a captain you might never see again, and you're sending it across thousands of miles of open water. No GPS, no instant banking app, no insurance form you can click. So what do? You build finance around relationships. In many parts of the Islamic world, merchants used partnership contracts where one side provided capital and the other provided labor and expertise, sharing profit and absorbing risk in a way that made long-distance trade possible. You don't have to be a legal scholar to get the logic. If one storm can wipe out a voyage, then you don't want a system that breaks every time a wave hits. You want risk sharing. You also want reputations to matter more than muscle. And the Indian Ocean was perfect for that, because the same people kept meeting each other season after season in the same ports, waiting for the same winds. Trust became a currency. We know this not just from stories, but from paperwork. The Cairo Genisa, an archive of thousands of documents preserved in a synagogue storeroom, includes a whole world of merchant letters and contracts. Some of them track Indian Ocean trade, letters moving between places like Aden and the west coast of India, filled with instructions, complaints, price updates, and the blunt reality of business. Not heroic epics, supply chain emails, written on paper. When you read that kind of material, the past stops being romantic. It becomes familiar. Because the merchants are doing what you would do. They are managing delay. They are hedging. They are diversifying. They are asking, can I trust this agent? Did that ship leave on time? Is the market flooded with pepper this season? And notice what's missing. A single conqueror coordinating it all. So how did the system enforce rules? Soft power, standards, and social pressure. Ports that attracted trade didn't just have docks. They had courts, brokers, weights and measures, people who could translate and mediate disputes. In many places, shared commercial norms, often anchored by religious and legal frameworks, made it easier for strangers to do business without stabbing each other. And when disputes happened, the real punishment was not prison, it was exclusion. If you get labeled as dishonest, good luck finding partners next season. Good luck getting credit. Good luck getting a ship's captain to carry your cargo. In a world where the wind forces you to gather in the same hubs again and again, reputation follows you like a shadow. This is why I call them soft empires. Not empires of territory, but empires of flow. A city rises because it becomes the place where deals feel safe, where information is fresh, where contracts can be enforced by community and consequence, where you can convert cargo into credit and credit back into cargo without losing your shirt. So let's zoom in on one monsoon season and watch the machinery. It's early summer. The southwest monsoon starts blowing. On the western edge of the ocean, captains prepare, dhows with lateen sails, bigger vessels too, ropes checked, hulls sealed, fresh water loaded. Cargo packed, textiles, metal goods, dates, horses, whatever the region is selling. Merchants are not just buying goods, they're buying timing. Because if you miss the wind, you don't just miss a deadline, you miss a season. Ships ride the wind eastward across the Arabian Sea. They aim for India's west coast, places like Gujarat and the Malabar ports. There, the ocean network becomes a land network. Spices move from interior farms to coastal markets. Pepper, cardamom, ginger, cotton textiles, precious stones. And yes, this is where the myth of spices as luxury perfume for elites needs an upgrade. Spices were also preservatives, medicines, status markers, and tradable, compact value. They were basically high-density money. Now the ships sit, not because they're lazy, because the system requires waiting. During that waiting time, business explodes, partnerships are settled, agents are hired, loans are arranged. Cargo is broken into smaller lots, spread across multiple ships to reduce risk. The ocean forces you to think like a portfolio manager. Then the wind flips, the northeast monsoon arrives, and the entire machine runs in reverse. Ships head back west toward Arabia and East Africa, or north toward the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf. Some cargo continues onward through other hands toward the Mediterranean world. Other cargo moves down the Swahili Coast, linking to inland caravans. This is why the ocean network could build wealth without conquest. It didn't need to control everything. It only needed to control the switch points, where timing, trust, and geography intersect. Now ask yourself, what happens when a node becomes too powerful? Conflict. Because if you can control a choke point, you can tax the flow. You can demand gifts. You can favor your allies. You can starve your rivals. Soft empires still fight. They just fight over tariffs, standards, and access. Take a place like Malacca. Its geography turns it into a funnel. A city like that doesn't need 1 million soldiers. It needs rules that keep ships coming. It needs neutrality that feels believable. It needs a reputation for fairness, just enough to keep the marketplace crowded. Or think about Hormuz, sitting at a narrow gateway. When you're at a gateway, you get to decide what normal looks like, which weights are accepted, which coinage is trusted, which brokers are licensed, which languages dominate the contracts. That's not just commerce, that's governance. And the most dangerous thing is that it's invisible. Because when you picture an empire, you picture borders, forts, flags. But the Indian Ocean's power was infrastructural. It was the ability to make strangers act like partners. This is why the finance matters so much. In long-distance trade, the real enemy is not pirates, it's uncertainty. So merchants invented ways to move value without moving heavy metal, to spread risk across multiple investors, and to turn information into leverage. Partnership models, like the Kirad or Mudaraba tradition, let capital travel with an agent who knew the routes, with profits shared by agreement. Sea loans and other maritime instruments in different regions tried to price risk itself. The point is not the names. The point is the strategy. Make the ocean's danger survivable, so the network can keep running. And once the network keeps running, something else happens. Culture rides the same winds. Diaspora communities form, traders settle in foreign ports, languages blend, religious ideas travel with cargo, food crops move across coasts, and suddenly a port city is not just a market, it's a mixing chamber. That cosmopolitan energy is part of the economic machine, because diversity creates brokerage. If you can translate between worlds, you can take a cut of every deal. So the Monsoon Network becomes more than trade. It becomes a civilization without a single crown. Now let's talk about the moment the system reveals its real face. A disruption. In modern supply chains, you've seen this. A canal gets blocked. A strait becomes tense. A pandemic closes factories. And suddenly everyone realizes the world is not built on things. It's built on flows. The Indian Ocean Network had its own versions. Political instability in a key port. War on a coast. A ruler who decides to squeeze merchants too hard. A rumor that a partner defaulted. A season of bad weather that delays fleets. Because the network is powerful, but it is also brittle at the choke points. And that's the mirror to today. We like to think our world is different because we have satellites and algorithms. But the logic is the same. Your modern economy is an ocean of logistics. Container schedules are just monsoon calendars with steel boxes. Ports are still switching hubs. Credit is still trust that has been formalized. Insurance is still a way to turn risk into a price. And choke points still decide who panics first. Here's the final twist. The Indian Ocean built empires without conquering them, because conquest is expensive. You have to pay soldiers. You have to police borders. You have to suppress rebellions. But if you can control standards, trust, and timing, you can get rich without owning the land. That is the oldest trick in global capitalism. So next time you hear the word empire, don't just picture armies marching. Picture a warehouse ledger. Picture a dock at golden hour, dust in the light, voices in 5 languages, and a merchant watching the horizon, not for an enemy, but for a change in wind direction. Because when the wind changes, everything changes. And if you want the next chapter, how Europeans tried to hijack this ocean operating system and what they broke in the process, subscribe, and I'll see you there.